Alrighty, quick A-League recap because boy, many games were rained out. How about that? We get away from COVID and then Mother Nature gets us back out.
Right.
Covering some quick hits from the EPL. Not a whole lot of games going on, but there is a whole lot of news. I'll tell you that much. And then we'll also get into the Super League. Back in business, perhaps. What do you reckon? Who knows?
Question mark.
Play that music.
Question mark. Woohoo!
Well, we will.
Woozle wazzle.
Woozle wazzle. Now, before we get into current events, worldwide current events that are sending shockwaves through football, A-League.
It's not domestic. Local
Yeah.
shockwaves.
Local shockwaves. Little ripples, we'll call them.
It sounds like a great
hey, little ripples. MacArthur versus Melbourne victory. Melbourne victory. Continuing their run, huh?
How about that? And the Bulls continuing their slide.
Yeah, boy.
Absolute. Mate, it's a night and day chalk and cheese difference between the Bulls that were pre-COVID, all the COVID interruptions, and the Bulls that we have now. Literally look a shell of themselves.
Awful. Like I just want to go back to the fact that you saying on their return from the break. I don't think anyone foresaw the team sort of coming back in such poor form, because you think when a team is doing so well going into a big break like that, obviously through no fault of their own because of the COVID stuff and all that sort of shit, but you sort of expected, because they were doing so well and they had so many new players in, you were just like, oh, look, they're in great form, and now they're finally getting that time on the training pitch to sort of get together and work on their tactics, and they've got a good coach, and it was like, there's really no indication there that they're going to be the sort of team that comes back out of form in the way that they are. But it just looks like, any sort of chemistry that they built at the beginning of the season is already gone. Like, it's just it's so crazy. Like, it's if they don't end up in the top 6 at the end of the season, they're going to look back at that break as like potentially the main catalyst as to why they fell out. It's crazy.
I wonder if it's something internal. There's some turmoil or something like that, because surely it'd be an external force or something like that outside of the COVID break itself to cause such a slide in the team, because or maybe it's just the fact that they've been found out, because realistically, right, their game plan before was to sit real deep and then hit you on the counter. And a lot of the goals they conceded against Victory, well, actually, I think it was 2 of the 3 or 1 of the 3, were conceded on the counter. Like, a lot of them were like, I mean, the first goal was handed to him on a platter by Shushnyar, and the third
by
one
the
was
way, he's probably like, it's not like Shushnyar's playing terrible, abysmal football, but he's probably one of those players you can look at and go, this is a guy that 6 months ago was a rock. You know what I mean? Like, just impeccable. He wasn't the guy that you'd pick for man of the match at the end of the games, but he'd man mark top strikers out of the game. He'd control the defense. He was very vocal. All these sorts of things. And now it feels like not only is his form dipped, but also like he's no longer that player anymore. And it sort of reflects. It's a reflection of like how the whole team's gone, where you can't really point at like, oh, you're just in a bad patch. It doesn't feel like that. It feels almost like, did someone abduct this team and replace it with lookalikes? Like, why is it so different all of a sudden?
It's there's no confidence.
I can't really, no confidence, no, like the tactical ineptitude, and not so much in a how they're set out sort of thing. It's more about like, once they're against the graft of the opposition, they sort of fall out. Like, there's nothing, there's no plan B, C. There's no patterns of play for them to sort of fall into. It's just very, very strange. But it might have to do with the fact that they might have been very heavily reliant on, like you say, the counterattack. And when you've got players like Craig Noon, Davila, De Silva, where, you get those 3 lads on a break, you don't really need to come up with a pattern of play. They're just going to do something creative on their own. Whereas, when you don't really have that option anymore, what happens? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do they go to? I guess we haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, exactly. I think that they just don't have those counter opportunities like they did before, where they can flourish and strike back and have the open space to play. And I mean, it's a weird thing. Maybe it's a coaching thing as well. Maybe they're not listening to Ante. Maybe he's run out of ideas. Who knows? But I think it's been a bizarre slide from such a high and mighty start. But on the other end, I thought Victory looked really, really good. Nick D'Agostino, first time in a while. Or I don't know if it's first time in a while, but he looked great starting. Usually he does a good role. Has a good
Super
cameo
sub.
off the bench.
Yeah.
But it's his first goal in 2 months and a race at that. So good on him. And there were good goals as well. And he looked very keen to play. I think the whole game can be summarized by the third goal where he back heels it in to, I think might have been Bremer off the top of my head, and then he fizzes it across to Rojas for a tap in or own goal. I can't remember how they called it, but I think it might have been Rojas that got the last touch. But it really summed up a fluid piece of play where the whole team was able to just kind of swiftly move the ball around. Very pretty football from front to back. Calabar still looks a bit weird in terms of he's still catching butterflies and fumbling.
He's
especially at the end. Like, he looks very confident in some stages, and then sometimes he just makes a brain fart, and then like the last goal. Oh well, MacArthur's first goal and the last goal of the game. The fumble.
Would you say it's a focus thing for him? Because he does sort of make these, they're not blunders, so to speak, but they're sort of like, I don't know, just
mental lapses. It's like he takes his foot off the gas. Like, he's like, we've got the win in the bag. I don't have to. He just kind of switches off for a second.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like there's a potential for him to be an Achilles heel for them. At some point when you get into the more high pressure, high tense situations and slips like that, what cost you the game. At the moment, though, Melbourne Victory, they were on a 3-game slide. Now they've turned it around with 2 back-to-back wins. MacArthur, arguably a very good, win to get. They've got a very strong squad. They would have been very desperate to get a win themselves in this game. So to go and take it, get 3 goals up is pretty good. What do you think we're seeing? Are they performing? Obviously, they're performing above expectations. Melbourne Victory. That's obvious, right? I mean, it's not really too hard of it's not too hot of a take when they finished literally, one of the worst positions they've ever finished last year, right? One of the worst seasons that they've ever had as a club under their belt. So
and new players too.
Exactly. So obviously, they're playing above expectations. But now that we've seen them, for quite a decent chunk of the season, we've seen them go through some turmoil. We've seen them fight back from the turmoil. I think we've got a good measure of them. Do you think they're overperforming, or do you think they're actually sort of on the money?
I think they're overperforming in the sense that no one expected them to be as good as they've been in patches this year, because I think everyone kind of thought, well, it's Popovic and there's new players, and then you've got some of the old guys that were there last season. It takes time, so everyone's like, look, we finished rock bottom. It's not going to be as bad as last year. So I mean, if you can get into the finals while doing it nicely, looking pretty, then I guess they would have taken it. But I think they're slightly overperforming, just based on the fact that they're really fighting amongst the top, and at their best, they really can hang with them. Some of the better teams
I'll position this to you though, because this is what I've been thinking about.
Position me.
I've seen this team at full flight have probably the best performances so far in the league. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think Melbourne City has put together a cohesive performance from start to finish as well as they have this season. I'm not saying that Melbourne Victory is a better team than Melbourne City. I'm just saying this season so far, from the games we've seen and from the qualities of players that they have, I've seen Melbourne Victory perform at their sort of peak potential. What I feel like is more times than what I've seen Melbourne City this season. Right. I'm just curious to see when we get into the actual, into the playoffs, into the meat and potatoes, everything, will they be able to recreate that potential we've seen past? And also, will City be able to sort of not pull something out of the hat, but like, will they be able to go back to the City that we know them as, right? And same for Sydney. That's kind of what I'm curious about, because so far we've already seen Melbourne Victory at peak potential. We know what they can do when all the things are clicking for them. You know what I mean? We haven't seen that from City or from Sydney this season. So I'm curious to see, will they step into that sixth gear when, the playoffs come? Or will it be too late by then? And will Melbourne Victory, just continue this form and get better and better and better and better? That's kind of why I was asking the question: do you think they're overperforming? Because what I'm thinking, like what I'm trying to weigh up is, are they going to be this Melbourne Victory when it counts?
Yeah, and that's my concern, and that's my concern, because they've had performances where, like against Melbourne City, they came back and fought valiantly, one of the best games we've seen all season. And then they've had stinkers where they literally lose to Western Sydney Wanderers away 1-0, and they look terrible while doing it. Like they had nothing moving forward. They look tired, lackadaisical, very opposite to what they looked like against Macarthur. So, it's hard to say, and I think for a team like that some of the players that came in or that were there last season and are here this season, it's hard to say, because they were rock bottom and didn't give a shit, and now they're fighting amongst the top. So I don't know. It might be a cultural change for them. It might be a mindset thing. I trust Sydney and Victory to turn it. City and Sydney to turn it on more towards the end, just because they're veteran teams, and obviously City coming off the back of winning the title. I think they know. I think they're more closer to. They've been there before, kind of closer to their success in terms of when they last won it. So I think they've got the opportunity to, kick into gear later when it counts and find the goal. Whereas Victory, it's hard for me to say, because it's been such an ebb and flow. Like, again, they've had a great performance and, really made it look easy. And then they've had stinkers against Brisbane. They've had stinkers against Wanderers. It's, which one do we see when push comes to shove in the clutch? So that's the one. I think if I was putting money on it, I'd probably bet City or Sydney to win in the finals, in a semi-final, something like that.
Yeah.
Then Victory.
Yeah, of course. That's what I'm kind of feeling too. Like I feel like it's Melbourne Victory has shown so far that at their best, they seemingly can put together better performances than what this current City and Sydney team can put together. It's the inconsistency that's a worry, right? Because even though Melbourne City, hasn't had a particularly good start to the season, they had struggles with injury. They had some weird rotation. It felt like what's his name, Paddy Kisnorbo was sort of losing, not the locker room, but like losing that sort of confidence that they had from the last two seasons, where they, were going into every game with an automatic win mentality. That's now turned around. But in doing so, I feel like they've had to go to a more risk-averse style, let's say, right? One that's a little less flowy and a little bit more reliant on players like Tilio, players like Lecky, players like who else plays in their attacking just behind their attacking team?
Berenguer.
Berenguer, literally everyone other than McLaren, right? To be creative in the final third and create chances. I haven't seen this season until it was against Western Sydney, which is probably more about Western Sydney than it is about City. But I haven't seen this season too many of those, team City goals. You know what I mean? Where it's going around, it's fizzing around. A lot of players are involved. A lot of chances are being created. You know what I mean? This season, it feels a lot more methodical and a lot more reliant on, your big marquee players, which I feel like is not conducive to playoff, football. I feel like when you get in that situation is when you sort of fall back on what your identity is. And that's probably the same issue that Macarthur will have, right? Is that even if they do pull it together, once they get into the playoffs, so to speak, they're not going to have this, tactical identity to fall back on. They've just been relying on their creative front three. And I feel like City is in a similar sort of position. It's just that they're making it work considerably more, They're at the top of the table.
They have a plan B.
Yeah, exactly. And also the quality is like much higher. Like when we talk about Macarthur relies on their quality is noon, De Villa, De Silva. It's 3 players. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And one of them in Craig Noon is probably given as much as he's going to give for any club, right? Whereas City has 7, 8 players that they can rely on in that sort of fashion. So so a little bit more sustainable in that sense.
Interesting times.
Yeah. So what else do we have here on the cards? We have Melbourne City versus Perth.
The other side of the Amy Park.
Yeah. So what do you reckon of this one,
mate? City, they bottled it. Plain and simple. Just a weird way to throw a game away after having such a convincing spell at the start. Probably the first half an hour. Like, I think speaking to kind of some of the issues for City this season. Obviously, McLaren hasn't been on a hot scoring streak as he was last year, and banging them in for fun. I think also Glover hasn't kind of taken a step up as everyone thought. Kind of showed in this game where he went in the first goal when he didn't get the cross, and then he just kind of confused his centre back, and Fornaroli had pretty much a free header to score in. Granted, the second goal he got a hand to it, but I'll give him benefit of the doubt because it does go through a lot of people. It goes through a crowd of his own players. Plus,
the second one isn't like it's not the way it's one of those things where it's like it's not his fault, but like maybe if you had Manuel Neuer in there, you don't concede that one. You know what I mean? Like it's a quality sort of thing. You know, like you can't expect world class out of nothing.
It's a coachable moment.
Yeah, but at the same time, the first goal, like
catching butterflies, son.
Yeah,
what are you
gotta do better.
Yeah, you got to reach at least if you're gonna come out with authority or get the ball. You know. And that's where he felt.
If you can't catch it, you got to get it out of the box. It's gonna get a punch.
Also, I think it's not the thing is not the issue itself, but the consistent amount of issues or mistakes he's had throughout the season. I think that's where my bigger concern has come. There's been drop points. There's been draws, wins that have turned into draws. So I don't know. I don't want to sound the alarm, but it's something maybe he comes into the next season working on, improved a bit more hunger. Maybe he's just tired because he did play in the Olympics as well. So condensed schedule as well. It's hard to say, but I think, he's another one of those players, kind of again like McLaren, that needed to take a step up this season and keep going, and they haven't continued their form from last season either. So yeah, it's difficult. But look, I think overall the team let Perth back into the game. There was spells where Perth were really ramping up the pressure on them, and it's surprising considering again it was a 2-0 lead, and they were pretty comfortable for the majority of it. I mean, when the second goal came, you would have thought, yeah, that's it, nail in the coffin, they're done. But it's just they just let it slip. Really, they didn't really they rely again. Lecky scored 6 and 7. He's hit a patch.
For sure he has.
Else? You know what I mean? Like where's the other contributions? Where's again that team play that helped them get to where they were last season? In terms of being a formidable team, where's the support? Where's the help? And I understand there's been COVID injuries. There's been a lot of interruption, but why is it just now Lecky? Lecky was the one that was ice cold before, and the team was playing a little bit better. Now it's inverse, where Lecky's hot and the team's gone cold. So I feel like towards the end of the season they'll be upset. They didn't take all 3 points from this. If it means that they finish, in a bye spot, maybe one or first or second, or they, interrupt. They face another interruption and fall out of the top 3 together and have to play an extra round. So I don't know.
I think it's also it's also one of those games that kind of shows that there is a way back in against this team. You know what I mean? And I think that's more of the problem, because I think it's going to be very hard for them to finish outside of the top spot because of the lack of consistency anywhere else on the table. You know what I mean? It would have to take a bit of a capitulation on their part, which I don't really see them doing. But I just feel like this game sort of outlines like a blueprint, okay, their keeper's not particularly confident dealing with crosses in ambiguous areas of the box, that sort of stuff. It sort of sets a blueprint for teams to exploit when they come up against them in what most likely would be the semi-final. But you know what I mean? Like this City team just doesn't have that. Like last season and the season before, yeah, they were just like, if you're gonna beat them, it's because like you got lucky or you sat in your box and you took advantage of your chance. You know what I mean? You weren't going to match them football for football, so to speak. Whereas now I feel like you can. You very much can. You know what I mean? And even in their victories, we've seen it. You know what I mean? Whereas before, the only time we really see a poor City game was when they lost. Right? Yeah. You wouldn't like. Whereas now we're seeing draws and victories where we look back at it and go, that's a bit wasn't great for them, that one. You know what I mean? So just not that same sort of spark that they had, that little bit of essence that they're missing from last season. And just want to touch on Lecky as well, being sort of shit on at the start of the season as a bit of a bust signing. And now he's got 6 goals in 7 games. You know what I mean? So
good on him. He's turning around. He looks a lot more confident. He's shooting first time. He's not dribbling as much as he used to. He just rifles them, which is good. One thing also I wanted to touch on while we're in the A-League. Rudin. He gets after 6 games. He's permanent. 22, 23, 24. So what's that? 2 seasons?
Yeah.
For the next and the one after. It's an interesting decision being made after 6 games, considering the 6 games haven't been a overall resounding success. If anything, any success. It's been quite a mid-run, so to speak. Mid-to-poor, probably. What are your thoughts?
Like you, I'm very confused as to why they've given him such a... It's obviously not such a long deal. It's not 5 years or anything like that, but it's a long deal relative to, the performances we've had under him so far. There's no, love at first sight sort of thing here where, there's 3 or 4 games deep and we're just winning every game back to back. It's not like Xavi at Barcelona where he comes in and suddenly there's a whole change to the feeling of the club. There's none of that. There's no real fan admiration for him. There's not like a sort of overarching idea or philosophy that we're maybe looking to subscribe with him. Like it feels as though it's the longest ever stopgap career, like a contract ever offered to a coach. Like it's like stopgap. It's a temporary. Like I feel like we're residing ourselves now to like definitely be mid-table for the next, year and a half, 2 years sort of thing, right? Because like there's no way that you look at the performances that he's done and you go, that's the guy. That's what we need. You know what I mean? At best, you go, look, it's been relatively, here and there with you. Not too good, not too bad. Some nice victories, some terrible losses. What can you do? Let's give you 6 months, see out the season. See how we go. Right? If he closes out the year and when all things said and done for the season, it's like, oh, look, we've beat expectations. He's got the players on side. He's got some ideas for the future. Cool. All right. Get him to 23, 24, whatever. But to do that based on what we've seen so far, it's completely illogical to me. And also sort of, I don't know, a backstep in what's been happening overall with the club. You know what I mean? Like there's a shake-up, there's management moving, there's all this sort of stuff. Oh, but we're going to sign this coach on a long-term contract. It's just strange. Like I thought we're trying to change what, out with the old, in with the new sort of thing. Why sign this guy for that long period of time? What do you reckon? Is it like the last CEO's last move?
I feel like it could be, but I think I would have understood it more if it was just a 1 year. Like, look, we'll let you finish this season. Next season, we'll have you on board, and then we'll go from there. If they said it was just an extension for 1 year, they'll let him see out the campaign, and then next year you have a fresh slate to improve in a whole season. I would have said, you know what, fair enough. It's a pretty responsible move. There's no, I guess, no one on the market at this stage to go, yeah, that's the guy that we want, or is a hot prospect or something like that. So, it would have been smart to go, you know what, we'll go into the off season with a coach. So then that way it's less turmoil. You have a full season, show us what you got, and then audition for the role full time. Otherwise, you can start looking at different options, or if it doesn't work out well, we just terminate you with whatever time's left. But for 2 years, it gives me a sense of like, I guess, not even an audition. It's more like, yeah, you've got the job. and we hope to, we're going to back you, and we're going to hope that you can take us to the next step. I just feel like it's based on what we see. Again, I think one is it's too soon after 6 games that haven't really. They looked okay in the first couple, and then it didn't get much better after that.
No.
It's a bit too soon. If they did this at the end of the season, I said, no, all right, fair enough. We've had I guess a bit more than a half a season to look at him and evaluate his position, and then they make a decision. But after 6 games, they haven't really looked anything flash. Not quite sure what the whole process is.
No, and it was just a month ago where there was rumors about Ufuk Talay being lined up for potential replacement because of the fact that, Rudin wasn't meeting expectations. Now, obviously, that's just a rumor, that's whatever, but that at least shows you the sort of sentiment that is out there amongst the club. You know what I mean? That there's not instability, but they're not assured of the situation under Rudin. You know what I mean? And I don't know if it was because it was Ufuk Talay that the rumor came out with, but hearing that there's a coach, potentially out there that is the sort of coach that could, bring in some sort of change in structure, it makes it sort of more upsetting that they've gone with Rudin, because what could he really do? Like, even if everything goes to Rudin's plan, what is the Rudin plan? Like, how good are we gonna? Yeah, like, what's the best case scenario? So, like, I just feel like they've gone with an option that was just, even if you want to say it was, the safer option because he's already on the book, so to speak, there's no real upside to it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how the team's going to improve under him. He hasn't done it at a club before, so there's no real past experience you can point at and go like, he's turned it around there. He hasn't done it here yet in a small amount of time, right? And then if you want to zoom out and look away from footballing coaching ability and just look at his ability to be a leader, I don't think there's anything there either. So, like, what's the reason? Why is this big man being offered the reins for such a long period of time? I have no idea. It's bewildering to me. Yeah, but it is par for course when you look at Western Sydney Wanderers' recent decisions. So,
that is true. Very much par for the course. Man, nothing much. Just watch it all burn down, I guess.
Alrighty. EPL. Couple things going on. Firstly, City versus United, the Manchester Derby.
Monday morning.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? What are your predictions? What are we looking at? Because it's a strange one, because I think, then here's how I see it. If this was an Ollie team, easy dub, no questions asked. 3-0, that's it. We bounce.
Yeah.
With their performance against Atletico and just how I guess tough they can be to break down and how long they can stay in games sometimes, I think with this version of United, it's not clear cut. I still think City will win. How comfortably is my question as well. Diaz is out for City as well. He's going to miss 5 to 6 weeks apparently, so he should be back in time for the Liverpool game. But that's yet to be determined, unless there's any like setbacks or any other further delays on his return. But I mean, City's in form. United is United. What do you think? Am I playing the right? Am I playing in the right ballpark or?
Well, all I know is this is a high pressure game for both teams. If United lose this, right, then they've left the door open for Arsenal to blow past them for fourth, right? Arsenal's got 3 games in hand and they're only 2 points behind, right? So they lose this game, suddenly they've got 4 games in hand and Arsenal is only 2 points behind. Like, it becomes a very, an eventuality, so to speak, that Arsenal will pass them. Like, I don't see Arsenal with 4 games in hand not being able to get 2 points. You know what I mean? Like, surely, right? So there's that. A lot of pressure on Man United. A lot of pressure on Pep. They lose this game, the gap closes to 3. Liverpool's got a game in hand on Manchester City, only 6 points behind, right? So they're 2 games behind, essentially, with 1 game in hand. So they're really close, much close. We were talking like not even a month ago. We're like, it's done. Give the title to City. boy, were we wrong. You know what I mean? Boy, were we wrong. Not because of any real capitulation from City's part. Actually, more the opposite. More just because of how well Liverpool have played. They've picked up every single point they could have for so long now. Like they're just they're killing it, and they're scoring ridiculous amounts of goals. They've got 4 or 5 players in ridiculous form. It's funny, right? Because I would say City is the best team in the league at the moment, right? But I would say the top 3 or 4 players in the league are in Liverpool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like 100%. Salah, Alisson, right? Van Dijk. And then it's like, you can argue for Mane, you can argue for you can even argue for Konate, even he's had, small amounts of appearances, but the football he's played, it's the highest, one of the highest level center backs we have in the game. And with Ruben Diaz injured, technically he probably is, in the top 2 or 3. He's been playing out of his skin. So when you pack all those sorts of things in there, you go, okay, this is a high pressure game. What does Pep like to do in high pressure games? I think he might overthink this. You know what I mean? I don't think it's going to be a banana skin game where they lose, but I think it's going to be a game where Pep's creativity will hinder them in some sort of way. You know what I mean? I don't know if it'll hinder them to the point where they lose, but it'll hinder them enough where it'll make it a derby. It'll make it worth the watch. Because I think Ralph is going to know that going into the game, and I think he's going to build the squad nice and tight, right? So they can at least survive long enough to see what this strange thing is Pep does, and then try to exploit it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
100%.
What is it going to be? Is it going to be false 9 De Bruyne? Is Rodri going to miss out on playing? Like what is that mix up going to be? Is he gonna drop João Cancelo or take him from his left backside into his natural right backside? So he can, what is he going to do that'll shake up the squad? And then what will Ralph do to try exploit that sort of inner surety that they might have there? That's kind of the only take I have on the game, because for the most part, I think the reality is it might just play out as the best team in the league playing against a team that's
the most inconsistent team,
but the most inconsistent. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I feel like that's the only sort of X factor there is what, is Pep sitting there lying awake at night thinking, I'm going to do that, If we get one of those Pep sort of, moments of genius, then there's a chance it could be a bit of a wild game.
I agree. As long as he doesn't overthink it, and kind of, because my concern is United look good on counters, and that's always been City's Achilles heel, counter-attacking. Because if they can exploit, as soon as you beat the press, and they don't win the ball back quickly, there's so much space in behind, which kind of Spurs really exploited when they got their win last weekend. So, do I think they're as capable? No, but again, when you have Ronaldo, Rashford, you've got the pace. And some of them are even hitting a few of their own strides. They're looking a little bit better, especially again the Atletico game was an indicator. I think it's not out of the question that they at least make a game of it. I don't see them winning it, but they'll at least make a game of it, which will force Pep to kind of maybe rethink his strategy or revert to something that he knows best and away from the I guess the kooky idea that he concocted the night before. So. We'll see how that plays out Monday morning.
Yeah, I was going to say, but just you were talking about the Atletico game. What if they play against City the way they did against Atletico in the first half?
Yeah. See you later. They're not gonna. Yeah, City wouldn't.
It's going to be like 2, 3, 4. Yeah, Atletico. City's nothing like Atletico. They get one goal and go, that's enough.
Yeah, 100%. If they play like the second half, then it's different. But if they play, City won't let up if they get any chances. So 100%. If City run away with this early, then it's early doors for them. Yeah. But yeah, it's I think it's a little bit closer than some people might make it out. Staying in the EPL, we spoke about it last week, and unfortunately, we were correct. Bielsa, last tango. Yep. See you later. Mutual decision. Out with Bielsa, in with Marsh. What are your thoughts on the appointment?
Terrible. Awful. Nothing against Marsh. Like nothing at all against him. I think he's a great. I think he's a very very good coach. I think he's got some good ideas. I think he's a good motivator in the way I've seen him talk to his players. I think he's good at incorporating youngsters. I think if he wasn't, what's it called, seceding, what's it called, Bielsa. I don't think it would be a bad appointment at all. I think he fits the club perfectly. You know, he's the sort of coach this club needs. But the to do it in the way that they did, where they sort of ripped Bielsa away, it's decimated the players. You can tell it's just ruined them. Like players that are injured or off to the side or haven't really been figuring in the team or have moved to other squads like Ben White are talking about the impact this guy has had on them. You know what I mean? If you're going to be the sort of club that stacks your team with young players and championship level players, you need the sort of coach that brings this sort of, response out of them. You need that guy, right? If you bring Jesse Marsh in, you're committing to a different direction. You're committing to getting, youth prospects. You're committed to getting, high quality talent for this man to work off of. You know what I mean? You're not going to give, him a beta and hope that he turns it into a Ferrari. Like it's just not going to work for him. He's not that sort of coach. It's I don't know if it's setting up for failure because he's good enough to maybe take a step to another level and show capabilities that he hasn't shown before, Jesse. Plus, he's a young coach as well, so we don't really know what we're going to get from him. But I think losing Bielsa is much more of a loss than anything you could gain with Jesse Marsh. You know what I mean? Like I think it was a bad move. Even if they don't stay in the Premier League and they go down, I think it's still more worth keeping Bielsa. Like he is the quality of the club right now. There's nothing else, There's not the players, there's not the the fans, there's nothing. It was Bielsa. He was what made the club what it is at this point in time. You know what I mean? The football that they play is obviously Bielsa. That's you can't within the lines of the pitch. It's his product. But then even outside of that, the way they run their training sessions, the way that their club picks players, the way that they were scouting youth prospects, all that sort of infrastructure, that's all gone now. You know what I mean? Like I feel like they've pulled out the wrong Jenga piece and it's just made it all very unstable at this point in time. You know what I mean? And now it's about, can they, continue for the rest of the Jenga game? Can they pull out all the right pieces and keep that unstable thing in the Premier League? Or is it going to be one of those things where they look back and go, why do we put ourselves in this stupid position? Why do we make it harder for ourselves? Why would a team that is struggling to stay in the Premier League get rid of the most influential coach of all time and bring in someone who's trying to find his feet? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just the plane's going down. All right, we're going to replace our veteran captain with this trainee pilot. Like, it just I don't understand why you would do that. It's a silly avenue to explore.
Yeah, I think look, if they weren't in a relegation scrap and Bielsa said, you know what, I've had my time at Leeds, I'm going on a sabbatical, I'm retiring, whatever it is, I would have gone, you know what, fair enough, Jesse Marsh, he's got a decent catalogue behind him, young guy, likes to play a similar philosophy with pressing, fair game. But I think my biggest concern is you're hiring a guy that was at Leipzig before, which is essentially a top 3 club now in Germany, who struggled to again keep clean sheets. Granted, they lose their best centre back and a lot of their best players, but he struggled there, and in terms of defense and also with personnel, couldn't get them to play his way or inspired to play for him, which is a concern. But also, he's going into a team that's fighting off, that's trying to stay up and stave off relegation. Is he fit for a battle with 10 or less games to go in the league? Like, it's not. He's literally thrown himself into the pit. And look, fair enough. If he's taken on responsibility and wants to take the charge and try to be the hero, hey, more power to you. But as a club, I don't think this is the right appointment. And I think if I get it, it wasn't Bielsa's best season. They conceded a fuck ton of goals. I think I think he deserves to at least see out the season and see if he can keep them up. Because by all means, it looks they're not an outside chance of being relegated, but they're not deep in the mix. There's worse teams. It's just the form at the moment is really poor. But I don't quite understand why would you appoint a guy that's not had a lot of major league experience, and then he's coming off a job where he was at a bigger club, not in a position of relegation, and was doing a poor job, so he got sacked, and he was part of the system, of the ecosystem of the club. It's not.
See, like if they had gone out and got someone who's just results based, pragmatic, no nonsense, then I would see the logic in. I wouldn't say it's a good move, but I would see the logic in. About, all right, you're panicking that you're going to be relegated, so you're bringing in someone.
If they got Roy Hodgson, I go, you know what? Fair enough.
You're trying to make sure that you stay in the Prem.
I understand.
You're trying to stay in the Prem. I get it, right? But when you bring in Jesse Marsch, it's like, well, you clearly still value the same things. You still want to do the pressing football. You still want to value youth talent. It's all the same values. You're just getting someone who executes them at a lower clip. Like, why? It makes no sense. I think now they've gotten to a stage where if they stay up with Jesse Marsch, right, the net value is still less than staying up or then going down with Bielsa. You know what I mean? Like, I would rather Bielsa with the team next season, with all the injured players coming back, with another year to squad build, all that. I feel like that team is stronger and has more likelihood of long term being a Premier League outfit than Jesse Marsch next season in the Premier League. You know what I mean? Like, I just find it weird that they went this way. Sad to see Bielsa out of the Premier League. It was good to have him in there.
Rip the man.
I'm upset that we never got to see him with a legitimate Premier League quality side, because last season with Leeds, he was doing very well with the Championship quality side. And then this season, they bolstered. They brought in some signings. None of those signings were maybe really the correct ones. And then on top of that, they had a slew of injuries that decimated their already thin squad. So we never really got to see like what it would look like, with a squad that has at least 5 to 6 players that actually deserve to be in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So sad that we didn't get to see that. But maybe what he's done with Leeds will give someone the confidence to give him a Premier League job again. I don't know.
Maybe.
But I think he's not coaching for a while.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think he's taking a break as well. And he's going to wait for the right project to come along. Sad to see him. And also, on another sad note, the end of an era. Abramovich has put up Chelsea for sale officially. Look, we're not going to get into the reasons why.
Saudi Arabia looking for the receipt for Newcastle now.
It's just looking like, what is the return policy?
It's like, damn, we could have had Chelsea.
Yeah, 100%. But the thing is, like, we're not going to get into the politics behind why he's selling him. Like, that's up to your interpretation and how you see things and how you deem his statement to come out for you. But I'm genuinely, part of me is actually sad. Yeah, it was oligarch and it was shady, and they kind of started the big money era in the Prem. When he came in, he really splashed the cash in. But I feel like, he was part of the I guess the furniture now, and he gave us so many great teams and moments, he could you say some of his practices were shady? For sure, but I mean, no owner, no mega businessman like that with that much money could possibly operate 100% squeaky clean. But I mean, he brought the likes of Drogba to the Prem, Mourinho, John, like the teams of the high years of Chelsea, the high watermarks, the team that won the Champions League. He gave us the chaos of all the constant manager rotations, especially the years between Roberto Di Matteo, Avram Grant, Andre Villas-Boas, like even Ancelotti, to name a few. So it's a sad time to see him walk away. But I'm kind of not, I wouldn't say concerned, but I'm more curious, what does this mean for Chelsea moving forward? Obviously, the squad they have now is good. Could do better, but that's something that they're currently working. They're working towards now. They have Tuchel. They've got Lukaku. What is the direction of this squad? There's been a massive investment over the last 2-3 years, and now the guy that's pulled off those investments and kind of, I guess, spearheaded him is now leaving. We don't know when, and all reports suggest it's not going to be a quick sale. They want their money's worth. They're not going to just fire sale and sell it for pennies to the pound. But what's next for Chelsea? Because he's been there so long. He's been the architect for a very long time. Even when he reduced his capacity and his decision-making capacities, he was still an influential figure.
I think there's just a chance for them to go the way that Arsenal went, where they get sold to owners that are more interested in running a profitable business venture than they are about trying to win everything they can. Abramovich made it very clear, like he wanted to win everything. That was the whole point. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't just like a Manchester City or PSG type buying of players where it's like, sort by most expensive. I want that guy, It was, he's splashing the cash, but he was splashing the cash because it was like he'd sit down with the coaches. The coach would be like, I want X, Y, and Z. This is my shopping list. And they would go out and get exactly that player. So it was splashing the cash, not because it was paying the exuberant fees for the most expensive player. It's because sometimes they were overpaying for players that the coach just really, really wanted, and Abramovich did not give a shit. That's the guy you want, or paying. I don't care. That is probably that could be, and you probably would say that in this current stage in time, that's probably a dying sort of mentality 100%. To have.
Right? Look at Everton.
Yeah, most clubs that are bought and sold these days are bought and sold under the guise that they are a business venture. They're an investment. You know what I mean? We saw that with Wolves, right? Most recently. So I guess it sort of depends who buys it, right? Are they going to get sold to another eccentric, oligarch, some guy who's really in it because he just wants the status of owning an exceptional club? Or is he someone who wants to, or she, someone that wants to buy the club to turn it into a business venture where, they're like Arsenal, where they're just always running profitably? Or is it going to be someone like that owns PSG, where they're just trying to turn it into a brand, right? So I guess that's the thing now with Chelsea, is that they're gonna go down a new path, more than likely, because the sort of owner that Abramovich is much fewer and further in between. So it's very unlikely that it'll be the same sort of outlook again.
Yeah, I'm just I'm genuinely curious, who's going to buy him, because obviously Chinese, when we had the massive influx of Chinese investment buying clubs across the world, that's no longer possible, because obviously with COVID, the economy's gone down, but also the tightening of regulations back in China. I mean, we can see it with Inter. The club has pulled out of funding and is looking to sell. So I doubt it's going to be a Chinese investor. All the Saudi oligarch, like most of the biggest Saudi businessman and the guy with the most money in the country, has just bought Newcastle. The Arab Emirates have, Man City. Qatar has PSG. Who's left for Chelsea, really? So it's interesting to see who's going to be the next buyer, because obviously we don't know where it's going to come from. Who's going to stump up the cash?
Also, I'm fairly certain that the EPO is going to change their.
There was talks about the fit and proper test. And apparently human rights violators will not be allowed. We'll see how that works.
Yeah. But, so I think, because, the Chelsea, the Romans already said that they're not selling this quickly, So what happens in between now and then? Do new regulations come in? Does that exclude more buyers? Does it make it more difficult to be sold at the value that he's looking for? Does it push out the sale? Does it push it out to the point where the political pressure for him to make the sale goes away? And he doesn't make the sale, because that could also happen. Because the announcement of it's up for sale isn't the same as the agreement that it's being sold. So I'm very, between now and then, a lot can happen. The world moves very quickly, as we found out over the last week and a half.
Very, 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 very quickly. But also, again, to your point, will they, with the changes in regulations, could they force him to kind of have to sell, regardless of the situation? The position becomes untenable for him. And there was rumors of him thinking about
but the
selling
thing is,
it as well prior.
If I don't see that ever happening, because if that happens in the EPL, then half the clubs are going to be without owners.
Yeah, 100%. It's just
so it won't be retroactive. It won't be retroactive. It will definitely be a from here on. Yeah, they'll never go back.
Ethics and multi-billion dollars, I don't think they mix together, a bit more like oil and water. But look, we'll see how it plays out. We'll see, what the outcome will be for Chelsea moving forward. I'm personally a little bit upset because, again, he definitely brought something. He was one of the first to kind of come in to splash the cash in the early 2000s and bring in the oligarch money into the picture, and he also gave us some fantastic moments in the league and for Chelsea. Really,
well, I think they helped make the Premier League era, because even though you have to say Man United definitely have dominated the Premier League era, that's obvious, right? And now City is getting their time in the sun, but Chelsea made the Premier League era because they were the ones that the first ones that kind of came in and broke the mold, right? And made it so that it's not going to be the same team over and over again. People can come in, buy a club, change its management, and really, turn something around, take something, because Chelsea were like a perennial, sort of like a Spurs almost. Just sort of hanging on the outskirts. And he brought them up and made them like a top 4 club. And now we've seen the same with Leicester, for example. So they sort of they modernized the EPL's business landscape.
100%.
Speaking of landscapes,
I was going to say, speaking of modernizing landscapes, we've got UEFA. They've confirmed the Super League. The new format coming up for 24-25. So what's that? 3 seasons from now.
Post Rudin.
Post what?
Post Rudin.
There you go. Post Rudin, exactly. There's a period before, after, and before Rudin. So it's 36 teams, up from 32. Group stages will be replaced by a league table. Sound familiar? Each team will play 10 games in the first phase, 5 home, 5 away. Overall, there'll be 100 additional games added to the calendar because we needed those. The top 8 sides will qualify for the knockout stages. Teams finishing anywhere from 19 to 24 will compete in 2-legged playoffs to secure their path to the last 16. So kind of like a round of 32 as we see in the Europa League. Boy, does this really, really, really sound a bit like the Super League, just with more players and probably a more formalized structure of how things will work in terms of the games played and stuff like that.
And more games, because that was one of the things that when the Super League was talked about, it was like, they just, because you compare the quantity of Champions League games to literally going off and playing a little baby league. It's obviously going to be more games, right? So that was the other thing, was you're gonna have the teams play in their regular domestic league and then another league. You're clearly trying to drag the clubs out of their domestic leagues, right? And that was one of the arguments that UEFA used. Now they're asking to add an additional 100 games to the calendar.
Put it this way, right? The group stages was, under the current format, 6 games, right? 6 games, 2 home and away. Now they'll have, I believe it was 12. So essentially double or 8, something like that. I can't remember the number now. Will be played in the group stage alone. So you have your normal.
Well, how many teams are in the group stage? You just said it at the beginning.
36, up from 32.
So there's 36 teams in the whole thing?
So, in the new format, there'll be 36 total teams.
Exactly, and it's one big league table, right?
Yeah, it's one giant league table.
Does everyone play each other once or twice?
Twice. So there's each teams will play 10 games in the first phase, 5 home, 5 away.
So 10 games. So you don't play everyone in your table.
Yeah, I don't know how the fuck this is gonna work, but
how are they gonna do that? That's confusing me now.
In the first, I don't know. Doesn't quite.
But you're right. Either way, it's gone from 6 games to 10. So
to 10. Where are you gonna fit these games in? The fixtures are already clusterfucked as there is. Because think about it, you've got your let's say you play Saturday, Sunday, right? Either one of those days. And then you've got your Champions League game that's on a Tuesday, Wednesday. And then you might have training, you might have Friday, you might even have a fucking cup game or something pop up in between. Where do you fit these extra games? How does that work? What if it's a World Cup year? What if like we still have COVID postponements or whatever? How do you fit these games in? Where do you find these extra? Where can you craft more hours in the day to play? Like it's barbaric.
Also,
there's no.
Also, I'm just trying to unpack. How does it work if it's one big table, but you're not playing everyone in the table? How do they select which 10 you're playing? Well, you're not even playing 10. You're playing 5 because you're playing one home, one away. Or are you going to play some teams home and play other teams away? What the fuck is happening? Hold on. Do you have that? You know that little post, that little
I'm looking at the poster now. Yeah, I'm looking at the poster.
Can you send it to me on Facebook? Well, let me open
it up.
Let me try and unravel this real quickly before we hop off here. That's actually mental. I completely skipped over the power as one. Yeah, okay. 36 teams total. Group stages are replaced by one big league table. Each team plays 10 games in the first phase. 5 home, 5 away.
Unless they have bigger groups, they have groups, and then like based on your performance in the group, that's where you go on the table.
Yeah, but what group? What do you mean? Like in a?
I don't know. I'm thinking like so. See how they have like groups now. Instead of being a table for the group, your performances reflect your position on the actual big table. I don't know. That's the only way.
Oh, okay. So they group everyone off.
Yeah,
right. And then but your score goes into like it's tabulated all together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's not like how there's like the best thirds. You don't have to do that.
Yeah. No. There's no best thirds. You just wherever your goal difference will place you. That's where you go. It makes no sense. They've got 3 seasons to figure it out, but I don't want them to figure it out. Just can the whole thing.
And I feel like no matter what you sort of come up with, it's going to be so convoluted. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be sort of. I feel like before the Champions League, the most convoluted thing about it was trying to explain away goals to people, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas like now, bro, I need like a freaking like a 10 slide PowerPoint to be able to explain where everyone's going to go and how you get there and what the fuck.
I need string and corkboards.
See, teams finishing in 9th to 24th place will compete in a 2-legged playoff. So from 9th to 24th. So out of the 36 teams, essentially 24 teams have a chance to go to the knockout stage. So
24 teams.
After a big league table of 36 teams, you only manage to eliminate 12 teams.
Great, huh?
What the fuck?
Great. It's so good.
It's mental. It's so drawn out. They may as well make it that Champions League is an evergreen tournament. There's never a winner. You're always. It's like the FIFA rankings.
Yeah, it's a round robin.
It's infinite. It's just always going.
You know what they should do?
And then just before the apocalypse, right? They'll hand out the Champions League trophy. That's what they should do.
Honestly, I reckon they should just say, look, in the Champions League, no one can run. You just have to walk for 90 minutes.
I don't understand.
You can't run. You have to walk. Draw it out even further because we already needed 100 extra games in the calendar. It's not like everyone was kind of switching out, tuning in to the Champions League more so during the round of 16 or quarterfinals already. And it's like, watch this really prolonged Champions League group stage. It's actually a giant big leader table, table.
It's going to be the NBA. It'll feel like the NBA route where no one watches until the playoffs. You know what I mean?
No one's going to watch until the quarterfinals or whatever they are after that 9 to 24 round of 16. It's just
imagine being the supporter of a big club, right? You've got from 1 to 24th. You know what I mean? Like any of the teams that are the consistents in the Champions League, right? None of them are going to be fearful of bouncing out in the group stage. You've got from 1st to 24th, as opposed to the current group stage where if you're 3rd, you're practically already 1 foot out.
You know you're in the group. You're in the Europa League.
Yeah, man. Like I just feel like it's leveraged so much towards the bigger teams.
100%. And here's another thing that's leveraged towards them. Think of it, how are they going to allocate these extra spots? Because it's now extra 4 teams in the competition, right? From 32 to 36. How do you allocate these? What, are you going to give more spots to the EPL so then that way we can see
Yeah, I was going to
West
say
Ham in
all
the
4 of
Champions
them.
League?
All 4
Or what,
of
you want to give it to some Germans or watch Freiburg, get whooped and finish 36 out of 36? Like, where do you find these extra Champions League? The Champions League is for people. Is the original concept is for the winners and maybe the second place teams in Europe. Why are we adding, people that are finishing 5th and 6th? Like, there's still teams in that are in the PL that are in 8th place that are still somehow able to qualify to play in any competition in Europe. You've got the Conference League, you've got Europa League, you've got qualification to the FA Cup. Like, it's just. It's like they're really handing out participation awards, and it diminishes the value of the actual trophy itself. Like, if you're gonna win the championship, no one's gonna care.
Of course, and they don't. I don't know. I feel like, but like they bottle so many things with that. Like, for example, in England, right? They've literally got 4 champions each year, right? They got the Premier League champ, they got the FA Cup champ, they got the Carabao Cup champ, and then the EFL Cup champ, right? You can send champions. You can send 4 champions every year. Why use the 4 table spots? You know what I mean? And then they cry, oh, why does no one care if they win the FA Cup? Why does no one win if they win the Carabao Cup? They probably care if we got them a Champions League spot for being a champion.
I don't know.
You know what I mean? None of this is the thing. It's none of this stuff is handled correctly in terms of pursuit of prestige anymore. It's and now, as we can see with the rezoning of the Champions League, we have an extra 100 games. Do you think that's to make the tournament more prestigious? No, it's to get more bucks out of our pockets. That's literally all it is, right? And probably to work the players to death. It seems like they want to murder all of them.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to the Super League really quickly, because obviously with this coming out, it's coming out in sort of opposition to Super League picking up some steam, some traction again. So the new rules have come out. They've got some more teams signed on, right? I think it's like, what was another extra 5-6 teams signed on for the Super League, and also no exclusion anymore. Remember how before it was exclusion? You could repeat over and over again, and it would lock other teams out. Now they've gotten rid of that, so it's essentially like the Champions League. You get in there by merit. So that's already starting to reverse in the other order. Also, before, when clubs first signed on about this, and remember how they took the back step? All the English clubs, for example, they're like, no, sorry, we didn't mean it. All those clubs are back on board, right? So that sort of just explained that whatever they said before was completely facetious. They were just trying to,
100%. It was damage control, man.
Damage control.
The things with these clubs is, if the right amount and the right idea comes along, they'll do it. They really.
I think personally, that once this new UEFA League, Champions League format,
you might as well call it the UEFA League.
Yeah, once it hits mainstream, and that everyone knows that's how it's going to be played, and everyone has that understanding, it's not news, because at the moment only people that are super in deep probably know about it. But once actual games are being played in this format, I think the Super League will pick up significantly more steam.
100%.
Because at the moment, fans are like, oh, you're destroying it. Because they don't want people to go away from the Champions League, because that's what we consider the prestigious tournament. But I can guarantee you that's going to erode away after this new format comes in. And then, you erode that prestige away, then we don't really care anymore. We just want to see the teams play the best teams now. So if that means seeing him in the Super League, then who's going to advocate for the Champions League anymore? You're not going to have that sort of fan pressure. So I think that the Champions League UEFA, have really shot themselves in the foot by trying to mirror what the Super League does, because now there's no reason for fans or players or clubs to back them anymore. Now it's like, well, your product is the same as theirs. If they're going to give us better conditions to a better environment to work in, we're going to go over there. Simply put, if the players don't grow up dreaming of winning the Champions League anymore, they just want to play for the biggest club in the biggest stadiums, then why are we gonna care about watching the Champions League?
100%.
I feel like they've watered down the product. It's going to be strange times coming up.
Strange times, yeah.
Alrighty, look, catch our replay on Spotify, on YouTube, even on Twitch for a bit. All glory be to Bozza, and follow us on the socials at Lasco Wins Podcast on Facebook, at LastGoWinsPod _ on Instagram, at LastGoWinsPod on Twitter. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.